Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
What's a Kcheyonkote language campus?
Bidaské.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, your host for today. I am the editor of Native News Online, and we are, during November, celebrating Native Heritage Month. Native American Heritage Month, and I would say, my panelists would say we celebrate who we are as Native Americans year-round, but since there is a month celebrating Native American Heritage Month, we do want to celebrate it, and what we want to talk about today is language. And Burton Warrington down below he's a tribal citizen of the Prairie Band, my tribe. He and I are good friends, and we have Ron Korn, and they are up in the Menominee Nation up in Wisconsin, and they actually have something called MenominiyoU, and a little play on words with a YOU, but it's really I guess the university and what they are involved with the revitalization of the Menominee language up there in Wisconsin. And so welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Doing good, Levi.
Yeah, doing good, Levi. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming and joining us. Miigwech to you. Burton, quite frankly, I'll tell our viewers, I saw you at the Native Vote Forum in Milwaukee last month, and you did a great presentation about MenominiyoU, and so I just think it's so valuable, the information you shared. I want to share it with our viewers, and why don't you kind of tell us about the origin of MenominiyoU, and then Ron, you can jump in anytime you want. So I'll start with Burton.
Yeah, so I think anytime we talk about MenominiyoU, our story starts there on the Menominee Reservation. I'm a enrolled prairie man, but born and raised in Menominee, and I'm Menominee culturally first. And federal enrollment aside, like I'm a Menominee person. That's where I grew up. That's where home is, and that's where my whole perspective on life comes from. But Ron and I grew up together on the reservation and graduated high school in 2000 together. And I went off into the world. Went through college, went through professional experiences, and through the entire time, Ron and I stayed closely connected in the community. And Ron was very heavily involved with the last of our first language speakers. So while I was out kind of traveling the world, Ron was there grinding on the language stuff through that whole 20-year period, and come to a crossroads in 2020 and decided we were going to form a nonprofit and try to help fill some of the gaps that we were seeing in capacity on the reservation for language. And a long history from there, but that's in essence how it got started. Is we always say that Ron and I couldn't have had the same experience. No one person could have had both experiences outside in the world and then staying there at home. So together we make a pretty good team. So.
Yeah, I'm impressed you did 2020. That was the year of the pandemic, the COVID-19. So that's pretty brave that you'd even do that. Maybe you had a little free time to really think about it. But tell us how it actually formed then in 2020, Ron.
Yeah, so that I think what you mentioned is a good place to pick up that narrative, because it was actually one of the things Burton left out in that brief introduction is that through his experience and going to school and the different environments that he worked in and things, he did also frequently come back home, and during those visits we would go on long woods rides and stuff like that, and just kind of have water bubbler conversation. And one of the things that became a theme as we would ride around was just having ambitions and visions about how to help our situation here at home. And so naturally things kind of gravitated towards the language, and this is no different than any other buddies anywhere, I think, that get together and just kind of talk that way. And but what did happen is a lot of different circumstances kind of came to a head somewhere around that late 2019, early 2020, and they kind of coincidentally lined up with the pandemic that set in on the world. And Burton kind of called me up and he said, "Holy man, bro," he said, "if all those things we talk about when we're out riding," he said, "if there was ever a time to do something like that, now would be a pretty good time. Everyone's kind of home and not in their routine of life." And so it was kind of out of those circumstances that kind of brought us around to actually formalizing the effort that became MenominiyoU.
Well, during the pandemic, several tribes lost quite a few fluent speakers, and so much so on the Cherokee Nation, they put the language speakers way up high with the frontline workers and those who were receiving the vaccine, because they were losing so many fluent speakers, and they're afraid that if they lost too many, they could potentially lose that language. And so how many fluent language speakers did you lose? Any up in Menominee? Was that an issue?
Oh yeah, we were already very low. So I think when the pandemic started, we might have been talking about having like 5 first language speakers, and they were all advanced in age. And anyway, on the other side of the pandemic, now we have one first language fluent speaker who, regrettably won, but then also we were able to celebrate her birthday with her and for her at the new building here, her 98th birthday 2 weeks ago.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and we also were able to have her be part of the celebration around grand opening, and also named one of our rooms after her. So, but to answer your question, one first living fluent language speaker in an unbroken line of speakers.
So what you're doing is actually quite incredible, and some of the two terms that I've seen in Burton, I've seen you use it in your presentation, and I want to talk about it is revitalization and then renormalization. Could you kind of tell us the difference, Burton, between revitalization and renormalization is?
Yeah, I think those two words kind of go hand in hand. If you're revitalizing something, it has to be in use, and renormalization means that it's normal to use it. The real pivot we were looking to make a change from is preservation. We weren't just interested in preserving the language for some future use. We're interested in using it today. So that's what a lot of the concept of MenominiyoU is built around, is actually using the language in everyday context, not just historic cultural stuff, but you see somebody at the gas station and ask them what they're up to, you should be able to do that in our language, and they should be able to tell you and tease each other, and everything we do in English. So.
And how different is the Menominee language from maybe like if you were to be fluent in Potawatomi? Is it quite a bit of difference?
Yeah, I think with Potawatomi and Menominee being both Algonquin, they're structured similarly, but
Okay.
but very very different than a lot of other language groups, including English. Just a lot of the thought processes is quite different, but most of the Algonquin language family follows similar patterns and similar thought processes.
Well, yeah, and then tell us about how many people are enrolled in your program now. How many are participating?
Yeah, so right now we've got a full. If we total our staff here, there's 18 employees here at MenominiyoU. We have 10 regular part-time student learners. Their job is to learn language, culture, history, and something we call modern lifeways. Our back office consists of around 6 of us here, 4 who are full-time and 2 who are regular part-time. And then we've got 2 college interns. And 16 of us can all have some proficiency in the language, which is getting exciting because we're creating an environment of speakers. And the students also get to learn in an environment where other people speak the language daily for the medium of communication. So we're fostering a pretty cool environment right here. And like I said, a staff of 18, 10 student learners, 6 back-end frontline workers, and then 2 college interns.
So was this like a Burton? What I saw in your presentation, it appears to me you really you use a lot of stats, use a lot of graphs, and looks like you approached it differently than just sitting in a room and you guys are out together talking. But you actually looked at numbers and you had projections, and you almost like somebody when they do a business, they do a feasibility study and they do a business plan. And so what was your vision back then in 2020 as you really took hold and said, hey, we want to do this? Your approach was it maybe from your, and I know you were economic development over at our tribe for a while at Prairie Band Potawatomi. Was that your approach? Just really approach it like as a, this is we have to have a different model, and we can really do this if we do it with some business principles. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, I think any dream in our communities, we always talk about people leaving and coming back home with these skill sets, and then how do you use them and apply them, these different things. So whether it's marketing, relationship based stuff, how to run organizations, did a lot of that stuff throughout my professional career for those 20 years. And when we got back, we did exactly that kind of a landscape analysis, figured out what was going on in the community, figured out more, and really took the time to study our community by segments, understand that not everybody is at the same level or interest level of learning, but we wanted to be inclusive of language where historically people might say the language isn't for me, or there's no ability for me to get involved in the language. So one of the things we strive to do was to say, if you want to be involved in the language, there's something for you, no matter where you're at on the spectrum of somebody who's who you might say is a supporter or interested but not ready to do it themselves, all the way up to a language practitioner. And it's a pretty tall task, because you're talking about a pretty wide range of differently situated people in the community. But understanding that, we were then able to layer programming over. So what Ron was talking about with the 10 student learners we have now, that's one of several programs. So we also run online programming, and that came out of the pandemic. We kept it going, and I think at this point we're up over 1,760 people that have enrolled in online programming with us.
Oh, wow.
Understanding our population is pretty good. So that's how many enrollments we've had, but that represents over 800 unique individuals, and there's only 9,000, give or take, enrolled tribal members, and a lot of them are kids. So we're making some good headway into the community and people that want to be involved, and quite frankly didn't have the chance to be involved a lot of times in language revitalization. But we understood if community language revitalization was our goal, you can't do community language revitalization without the community. So you got to be flexible and find places where people can get in at their own interest level or commitment level.
And with numbers, and I love the idea that you have those numbers that you showed them on the screen. It really speaks to impact, meaning that you have people engaged, the numbers are there, and that's impact. But Ron, in terms of impact long term, the revitalization, renormalization of the Menominee language, what kind of impact would you like to see happen within the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, that's a great question. So when we were brainstorming MenominiyoU and doing like strategic planning and generational planning, we asked ourselves this question. And one of the things that we ended up coming back to was this idea that was put out at one time by the National Linguistic Society, that they set out some factors for language safety, if you will. And talked about needing multi-generational speakers. So just having a lot of elders doesn't make your language safe. And only school children learning certain things doesn't provide any safety factors either. But one of the things that set of factors had stated was that when less than 10% or when less than 20% of a nation speaks their language, that language will die. That was one of the things that was in that metrics. And so we've sort of taken the approach that the generational lift that we want to be part of is contributing 10% of our local population into that speaking environment. So we did some projecting, and we looked at we grabbed a number, 2,338 local resident folks who are tribally affiliated, and said we want to target 10% of that purely through MenominiyoU. And we've got metrics as well to measure that, how we would put somebody in that category. So we're looking to bring on somewhere around 240 new speakers in a generational movement. And we hope that the tribe and the school resources meet us somewhere to that we might be affecting that 20% range in a generation.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's really doing it, and that is impact. Burton, in terms of financing, you guys are set up as a nonprofit, 501c3?
Yeah.
And as I recall, you didn't rely a whole lot on tribal support, was it? Is that true? Or tell us about how you got financing. You put up a $5 million building?
Yeah, $5.2 million. A little north of that is this entire project. Just a physical infrastructure, but amazingly, we did it without any tribal financial support. But key to that is that we do have the tribe support. But
Yes.
when you grow up and live in an environment where resources are scarce, one thing we endeavored to do was to be additive to the community. So it's not that the tribe doesn't support us, but we weren't going to rely and ask the tribe to split hairs on already existing resources that we're short. So we set out on this plan to say we're going to go out and raise the money, and we opened the facility. We used to say without any dollar of tribal, federal, or state resources, but subsequent to that meeting in Milwaukee, we actually got $850,000 from the state of Wisconsin to go towards the construction of the project. So, at this point, we don't have any federal or tribal funds directly in the building project, but we do, as of a couple of weeks ago, have state funding in it. But a lot of relationships, a lot of being able to tell the story, and having this generational plan and be able to think that far out goes back to these business principles. And none of us know what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, and we'll continue to adapt. But if we didn't have this long-term stretch goals of saying in 2020, how does 2045 look to us? It's hard to know where you're going if you don't have this kind of target stretch goal to be building everything towards. So, part of how we've told the story, part of what we've been very clear with funders is our language got into the shape that it is well over a century of attacks, and we're not going to get it back in a 1-year grant, a 2-year grant, a 3-year grant. Like, this is literally generational work. You got to think of things in 25, 50-year segments, and that's part of the vision we have, is knowing that every day that more languages spoke, it's a step forward, and we know it's going to take a full generation to achieve the impact that we want, but that's all right. Our language didn't get this way in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It was well over 100 years of targeted attacks from state and government, religious sponsored genocide. That's a pretty tall task to turn around and fix, but we're up for the challenge.
Well, yeah, and you think in terms of, when you mentioned 100 years, I immediately thought about what was even taking place during that 100 years. Indian boarding schools where across the nation, many of them were our ancestors who went through it, endured the pain, the physical, emotional, sexual abuse, but literally have the language beat out of them. I remember on the road to healing, one woman said, they took my language through lye soap. You think about that, it's pretty harsh. And so the idea that you are bringing this language back is just phenomenal. I take my hat off to you, and kudos to you. So Ryan, what would be the last word you'd want to leave in terms of the future? And I love the whole discussion of generational, thinking in terms of generation. You guys would be a model for other tribes across the country. So you probably would start getting some phone calls. So what's the last word you want to leave?
Well, I would say that what we're doing right now is even for me in it's pretty inspirational and it's pretty unique. But I would tell anybody out there that this didn't happen overnight. We've been doing this work for a really long time, and I think our tribe actually got serious about language revitalization in the later part of 2015. So we're just coming over 8 years of active revitalization efforts, and we have been adding a ton of language infrastructure into our community. We took a current lay of the land at that time at 7 7 language teachers who were teaching language classes in our school district and our tribal school. And now we've got nearly 25 language teachers. Many of them are immersion teachers. We have continual cycles of second language adult immersion. We're growing our capacity to where we actually have a Menominee born and raised linguist who is now our current resident linguist here on the reservation. We've got so many exciting things happening, but it's all on the heels of a lot of hard work and a lot of communication and a lot of resiliency. And so it isn't that it is not possible for anybody. I think the fact that I'm a part of this says to anybody out there that you can do this too. But just remember, it takes time and a lot of hard work, and who knows, maybe you too can revitalize your language. And I want to thank you for the time on the air today, and for any language programs out there that are looking for something like we're doing. We're always happy to have an open dialogue and share anything that we can.
That is the Native American way, sharing that good information. Hey, Burton, tell me this. We haven't talked about this before we go. What are people able to do this online as well?
Yeah, yeah. So a certain portion of it, are online classes, but the real heart of it is going to take place in the community and physical proximity. Mm-hmm. So our language campus is an immersive space where if you walk in our campus, in our facilities, you're going to hear the language. Beyond just hello, goodbye, how are you doing? Like, you hear it used in everyday conversation, and that's hard to replicate online. You can do it to a smaller extent, but really just being in the place, living and breathing it is something that's pretty key to what we're focused on, is getting back into an environment where we're able to use the language in normal everyday activities. We're not asking people to change the way they live their life, but every one of us uses language all day. And what would happen if you continued to live your life the same way, but you were just doing it through the medium of our own language? And that's part of what Ron's talking about, is generational investment. And the investment the tribe made before is making a space in an environment that's conducive to having that. Is all part of this plan, because that doesn't happen overnight. But yeah.
Well, thank you both, and I give you all kinds of praise for what you're doing. And as I said, they beat it out of us, the language in Indian boarding schools, but you're bringing it back in a very risk-free environment, and that's good news for young people today. They may or may not even understand the significance of that, but what you're doing, both, I compliment you for that. And enjoy the rest of Native American Heritage Month. So to our viewers, Kcheyonkote for tuning in. This will be shown right around Thanksgiving, the week before Thanksgiving. So however you celebrate Thanksgiving, there again, we say give praise and thanks every day to the Creator. So love your elders, give them hugs, and be kind to one another. And that's really the message I like to leave every time we close down with Native Bidaské. We got to be kind to one another. We're all in this together. So Kcheyonkote, and we'll see you next week.
November is Native American Heritage Month. Our people have thousands of years of history on this land, but we also play a vital role in contemporary society. We are astronauts, physicians, and attorneys. We are journalists, entrepreneurs, and fashion icons. We serve our country. At Native News Online, we celebrate Native American heritage every day of the year with stories about our relatives who are making news and leading change. We are free and independent, Indigenous-led media. We are trusted in Indian country. Our role goes beyond reporting the news. We make an impact by informing and uplifting our people. Our mission is to make sure Native people are seen, heard, understood, and valued. That's why we've written hundreds of stories about Indian boarding schools, the repatriation of our ancestors, missing and murdered Indigenous people, and the overdose epidemic in Indian country. Because we know when tribal communities come together and stand united, there can be healing for our elders and for generations to come. Native American Heritage Month is a great time to show your support for Native news. Please give from your heart so we can celebrate Native voices year-round.